Welcome back, everybody, to the Dive Jump, where we jump into diving. Today, we have Mr. Katz. He is not a diver, but he has questions because he's been listening to the podcast. He's my buddy. He's been listening to the podcast. He doesn't know anything about diving except for the bullshit that I've been feeding him. So he's going to ask me some questions. Hello, Mr. Katz. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to try to not bullshit you too much. I understand that you've been listening to the podcast and you have some questions.
I have a bunch of questions. I have a bunch of questions.
All right,
And
let's start with the first. No, you know what? Let's start with the second one.
the second one,
The second question.
why would somebody cheat a dive book log?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't understand it. I think maybe when you're young, look, so more dives, especially at the lower numbers, you need a certain number of log dives in order to get to to be able to go to the higher level of diving classes. So I think there's like a minimum of 100 dives for instructor, dive master, technical diving, some other, stuff like that. There's also like a limit on the age, so you can't really fake your age.
Okay.
But so I think maybe some people want to get in faster, but it doesn't really, I mean, I don't get it. You get a card on your card, it says like number of log dives. So if you get like a certification and you have a higher number of log dives, I guess your ego is stroked. The instructor doesn't care, and if you have a person with 1,000 dives on in the logbook and they still are a potato, which can happen. I mean, there are people who do. The way I explained it is instead of doing 1,000 dives, they did the same dive 1,000 times. They're not actually that good at diving. They're kind of like potatoes. They have really bad habits. They never got out of them. Maybe they're like old school, or maybe they never like learned well to begin with. I mean, you'd think that after like a lot of dives, they'd be really much better than they are. But you can tell. You can tell. Like an instructor, most of the instructors, man, they can tell within like 5 minutes of seeing you in the water how comfortable you are. A lot of people can just by the way you put your gear together, they will be able to tell if you're like up on your stuff or not.
So I was listening to your previous podcast, to your first podcast actually, where you're describing how you can tell how experienced someone is by how they walk, but your words, how they walk, how
Yeah.
they pack their stuff together. Okay, not just the actions that they perform in the water, but also before the water. It sounds like. Okay.
So I'll give you like three ways. So look, we're talking about padding the logbook, and now we'll talk about like why it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how many dives you claim you have in your logbook. If you're going down to a technical dive and you keep fiddling with your gear, you move the same piece of gear 5 times from here to there to there to here to there to here to there to here. It's just not going to work. I mean, people are going to look at you and be like, dude, you got to be more streamlined. It can't be that you have like all of this experience. Now, if you say, look, hey, I'm a new guy and I'm going to check everything like 50 times and I'm going to be like, okay. And I'm like, that's why we have in technical diving, we have checklists, but we also have that, like, we have all kinds of heuristics for like how to do a buddy check and how to assemble your gear. And if someone keeps like messing up simple things, like they can't get their tank strap just right, or they're not really sure which one goes where or what height everything is. And some people would be like, they try like 5 different times. Someone who just grabs it, sticks it on, like takes the BCD, sticks it on the tank, clamps it, puts a regulator on, and just, has one, two, three, four things that they check. And you can just see the process that they're going through and like just the speed and comfort in which they check things. They check everything. I'm not saying that they're doing it like slip slap, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. They're not
Yeah,
cutting any
they're not
corners.
cutting corners. Yeah.
No, they're not cutting corners, but they're doing everything like quickly. And it's almost like, the difference between lazy and efficient, you know? So they don't,
So
yeah.
So what happened with this guy? Okay, the backgas, the guy who started the dive master,
Oh, that's
who
different. That's
normal,
different. No,
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 so
you're
no,
talking about the accident. So there's supposedly an accident that happened in Dahab. There were two at the same day, or like within the same, couple of days. So I think they got mixed up between the two of them because they're very similar profiles. Look, that place has like a million divers. I don't know, hundreds of people dive there all the time.
hmm.
So I'm not exactly sure what happened, but supposedly, and this happens, so supposedly a technical instructor doing a guided dive, which is very normal there. That's the only way you can dive in Dahab is with a local dive master. You always need someone who's like by law, by like,
Hmm.
Egyptian law says that you have to. Um, and apparently, I don't really know exactly what happened, but you have multiple gases when you're doing open circuit dives to depth. So you
Yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
the gas that you breathe when you're deep, the gas that you breathe when you're shallow. Most people that go to the arch in the blue hole, which is at around 60 some meters, you don't actually need, you can actually start with your back gas and
Well,
just,
what can you say what I thought backup? Yeah, I thought it means backup gas. Like
no,
if
no,
you're
no. Back
one,
gas is the gas, your main tanks. You have your main tanks and you
okay.
have your decompression tanks. So you
Oh, okay.
descend. So when you have hypoxic mix, you cannot
Yes.
breathe that gas to the surface. You have to start with one gas, like something that you can breathe at the surface, and then you go down, and then you switch off to your deep gas, and then you breathe that gas all the way at depth, and then as you
Okay.
go up, you switch back to your the gas that has enough oxygen to sustain, life.
So he just so he was so this guy
From what I
was
understand, he was using his decompression gas as his travel gas, but he never switched to his back gas when he got to depth. And too much oxygen gives you something called oxygen toxicity. And it basically, you know, he glitched underwater. And I guess the people look, when you're a tech diver, no one is looking at you.
yeah, yeah.
You are responsible for yourself unless you're doing like specifically team diving. And there's actually a very interesting paper about it, article in In-Depth magazine that Jared Jablonski just put out about like the difference between buddy diving, team diving, and diving alone. And it's kind of like having a roommate. A good roommate is awesome. A bad roommate is awful, and it's better to have no roommate than a bad roommate. It's the same thing when you're doing like tech diving. It's better to have a good buddy than a bad buddy, and it's actually better to dive alone than with with like a bad buddy.
Uh,
Um, but a lot of people would say, no, just don't dive alone, find a better buddy,
okay, all right.
which is
So
legitimate. Yep, that's fine.
how the fact that he started feeling this and he succumbed to it eventually, but but he was alone, so nobody saw it, right? So
No,
otherwise
no,
people could have.
there was a group. I don't understand.
Oh.
I don't know exactly how many people are in there. And look, this isn't like Australia and, Europe where they have proper reports on everything that happens. Um, I haven't seen like an official report for this thing. But look, this is a common it's like so common that we talk about it like as if it's obvious no one will ever make this mistake, but there you go.
And it happened just recently, right?
Yeah, within the last year.
Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, the,
but look, you can look at the accident pages all the time. I mean, just May of last year, a commercial diver died in Italy during a commercial operation, and that's impossible. That just doesn't happen. Like commercial divers, by the time that you're in the water, you've gone through 3 hours of like OSHA or surface safety and health and safety inspections, whatever it is. Like by the time, like this is for insurance companies usually. Like, and this
mhm,
specific one was for an insurance company. It was a major Dutch corporation that does this. Like, this was a legitimate. This wasn't the kind of crap that I pulled when I was like in my 20s. This is like the proper like way that you do commercial
mhm, mhm.
diving. And he, I speculate onto what actually happens. I had a speculation at the time as to what happened, but it doesn't matter. Like my speculation, the fact is, there's a dead diver in a work dive. That should in commercial diving. It shouldn't happen. Look, people get hit by props. People get hit by the boat. People, have near misses with misconfigured gear. Rebreathers have, a thousand different failure points that people train for specifically. I mean, the training is because there's so many failure points. It still happens. We still have people dying from, bad training, bad gas, bad equipment, bad decision making. Usually 99% of the time, it's going to be they did something they shouldn't have most of the time.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Now,
Cool.
thank you for that. A couple other questions. Okay.
Sure, sure, sure.
There's one big one that I really want to ask. Okay, which I think will resonate with other lay, quote, unquote, lay people. Okay, like people
Yeah.
who are not, who don't have a background in diving. So, but the first one is going to be the more technical one. You mentioned gases that you switch to when you drive deep. Okay, and I'm assuming that's a trimix or one of those other kind of gases mixes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you breathe trimix? So, a couple questions. One, can you breathe trimix on on sea level? And was that still okay, or will you just
Yeah.
fall asleep because you don't have enough oxygen?
No.
Also,
Uh,
what?
there's two different types. So if you just look at the percentage of oxygen, forget about everything else that you put in there. So
Hmm,
you do need a certain percent of oxygen in order to breathe at the surface, period. And usually people say that it's somewhere between 18 to 16, but like I think most of the industry has pretty much said 18% is, you know, you need that in order to function. And I've seen that some people have experimented down to like 16 or whatever. Okay, sure. Um, so if you have less than 16% at the surface, you need to go down in order for the partial pressure of oxygen to increase, and then you can breathe it because it's based on partial pressure, not on percentage, really.
so are you still breathing? Are you still with trimix? Are you still breathing the same amount of oxygen or less oxygen?
PV equals nRT, right? So the
Sure, but
higher the pressure, the more moles or molecules of oxygen that you are going into to create the same volume, which is your lungs. So you
oh, okay,
you
okay.
are
So that's
breathing. So the partial pressure, it's basically guided by the partial pressure, and at the surface, at 1 atmosphere, 0.16 or 0.18 is 18%. So, and then the rest of it would be like nitrogen or helium or whatever else you have in the mix.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But as you go down, you could breathe 1% oxygen.
How much does your body actually need of that entire?
The
Or
body doesn't need percentage, it needs amount, a total amount.
okay, so can it get
And
that amount from like 6% or 7% trimix? Really?
why
Wow.
not?
Okay.
At that, at
So
even at
it
1% oxygen, if you go to 100 meters,
yeah, you can function. You won't like it's not like
I
anoxia or
mean, the
something.
only way to get to 100 meters is to use a hypoxic mix of oxygen.
When you say hypoxic mix, oh,
It means that
like
you cannot breathe it at the surface. At the surface, that
that's
percentage
what
would make you faint. But as you go deeper, because the pressure increases, the partial pressure of oxygen increases, and
increases.
therefore you have enough oxygen to sustain life. And you can be there for however long you want. I mean, the commercial divers who go to like 200 meters, they live on it for a month.
So okay, so conjecture.
Rebreather divers do have a mix on the fly, and their percentage.
Excuse me. I have no respect for breather divers. Let's just establish that first off, okay?
Of course
Okay.
not. Of
There's a
course you wouldn't. I have huge respect. Of course we have huge respect for,
kidding,
yeah, of
kidding,
course, of
kidding.
course, of course. Of course we have huge respect for breather divers. And the machine that they have on their back creates a
Mm.
mix on the fly that is not based actually on percentage of oxygen. They go by partial pressure, and they basically the unit with the electronics and all of that keeps the partial pressure of oxygen at like whatever the set point they put. So they could do like point 0.7, 1.2, 1.5, 1.6. I think there's some people claim that they go as high as like 1.9 for decompression. So, and
So
don't
so
worry
you
about
said
what these numbers mean. It's just more oxygen in the mix, but it's based on partial pressure, not based on percentage.
okay. Okay, then what about this then? Because it kind of segues. So I remember speaking with you about rebreathers on our walks. Okay,
Yeah.
the question that I said that I had is why are they so darned expensive now? Considering that they were made in the 50s, why are they so expensive relative to scuba equipment? Okay, I understand that there are moving gears. Okay, I understand moving pieces and everything. I don't want to steal your thunder about this. I'll let you
There's
answer,
a
but
lot more systems inside of a rebreather than there
yeah.
are inside of a scuba regulator. A scuba regulator, you can
Okay.
take a tank, you put, um, I think there's like two moving parts inside of it and seven total parts, plus the second stage, which has been basically unchanged since the 70s, I want to say 80s, maybe even no, maybe even like the 40s and 50s. I think like since Jacques Cousteau, it's like basically the same thing. Like the single hose regulator, I think hasn't changed since whenever it is. Don't catch me on the date. So
So
that is relatively simple. There's no electronics. There's no nothing. There's no two moving parts.
so then my next question is, all right, considering how a rebreather costs a minimum of $1,000,
$10,000.
$10,000, when is somebody going to enter the market to disrupt it and give one of $500 that does all
No,
this
you can
stuff?
make one. You can go to Home Depot and make a rebreather right now.
Call back.
Yeah.
You get, yeah, but I mean, but I want it certified. I want to pass all the inspections and all that stuff.
That's what you pay for. I mean, you can make a rebreather. I built a rebreather. Hey, don't do this at home. I do all
Yeah,
kinds of
yeah,
weird
please
shit.
do not do this at home, okay?
I've done all kinds of weird stuff over the last, 25, 30 years of diving.
Mm.
But I built a rebreather just to see that I can. It was, it worked fine. It had one sensor. It died on me and I just kept diving it anyways. I did one dive on it for 40 minutes and that was the sum total of rebreather time that I put on that particular unit. It had no electronics and it was very janky. Okay. It made it out of parts from Home Depot. You can do it out of $50 worth of Home Depot parts.
Where
But
did you try it in your bathtub or something or what?
no, I tried it in a pool. It was, I tried it in the
Okay.
pool. I was, I had a scuba regulator between my legs and I just sat in the pool and I kind of breathed off of it for 40 minutes and it worked fine and I didn't die and it was very stupid and bad. And I had a rescue diver right in front of me, so it wasn't
I'm
like
glad. I'm very glad you had a rescue
no,
diver.
no,
Thank
I
you.
do all
One of the most important, one of the most smartest things you ever did in your life, okay, was to get that buddy with you on that dive
no, all
specifically.
the time. Every time that I do like something that is really, really weird, I go to the pool and I have a rescue diver like right next to me. And I don't mean like somewhere over there. I mean like literally holding my face practically. But anyways, so rebreathers are very difficult. If you want to hear they're the newest, I think the latest certified rebreather that came out, probably the KISS rebreathers are the latest to get certified by the European, the CE certification. And I want to say it took them 6 months or something like that to just do the testing. And it took them like 3 years to just do the design.
How much are they selling it for?
I, I don't know. I
10,000 and
something like 10,000. I mean, some of these look, this is expensive stuff.
I
Rebreathers
bet,
are
but yeah,
expensive.
but yeah, we
There's
have, yeah.
electronics, there's breathing gas, there's tubes, there's a high oxygen, like, compatibility with high oxygen so it doesn't like, catch fire or something underwater, which you don't want that. There's also like it has to work at very cold temperatures at and very hot temperatures and still like not kill you. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And so that that process is very expensive, time consuming, and honestly, they're not selling a lot of these. Like if they were
Because
selling millions of them,
they
it would,
could if they lowered the stupid price.
yeah,
Just a
no,
thought, just a
there's
thought.
not enough people who are even qualified to dive a rebreather, let alone you know, buy rebreathers on a regular basis. There are people who dive the same rebreather for, 10, 15 years,
I
the same
wasn't
unit.
okay. All right, all right, all right. Next question.
Next question.
Next question, and this is a more philosophical one. Okay,
Yeah.
as a lay person, okay, who doesn't have a background in diving, what is the point of diving for me? Like, what like let's say like a person who doesn't have a background in diving, what would they be looking for to get out of the dive? What
I'll
do you do
start
during a dive? Right.
I'll start with this. I'll start with
Yeah.
this. Number one, it's a time consuming, expensive, um, dangerous,
Okay.
hobby. It's not a sport. You're not, I mean, fat people can do this like easily. Like you don't have to be in really, I mean, it's better if you are in shape, but you don't have to be in good shape in order to do this, even at a relatively high level. It's not like it's only for triathletes and people who can climb like Everest or something. So I'll start with that. Number two, I'll also say there's absolutely no reason to learn how to scuba dive. There are people, I know them, who live long, happy, fruitful lives, productive members of society, never been in the water, with a scuba apparatus. I know. It sounds shocking to us, but I promise you these people exist. It's perfectly fine. It's totally normal. Not everyone who is a diver is a wonderful person, and not everyone who doesn't dive is an awful person. So,
Okay,
having said that, here's what you get out of it. So, number one, I think there's a whole type of manly men, bros, that this gives them an ego stroke.
hmm,
Totally legitimate. I mean, if it happened to anyone who's not a douchebag, we'd call it empowerment. And I think it's important. If your kid, if you were like 15 or 16 years old and you signed up for a scuba class and you have missions that you have to perform on your own, you have things that you have to do on your own, you're responsible for gear, you have to
yeah,
assemble it. So that's a mechanical,
yeah.
physical, dexterity thing. You are responsible for being a good buddy. You learn morality from it, a little bit. And obviously, nature conservation nowadays, every scuba class has that part of it. Um, I think it adds to you as a well-rounded human being. I mean, you can get this in other ways, right? You can take your kids hiking. It's the same thing, but it's just one more way of creating that in a child, but it's the same thing in an adult. And I think that the you can see the number of empowerment programs for victims of sexual assault, victims of domestic violence, victims of war wounded,
Th-
who go and do scuba as take your
Therapeutic.
psyche back. Yeah, yeah, therapy through scuba or occupational therapy or something like that.
And when you're on, okay, so when we're going on these scuba dives, okay, again, lay people, not experienced divers, what are we doing? Just looking at the ground?
So
Are we
open
looking at the
water.
coral? What?
So as an open water diver, there's two things in the water, two types of things, either
Yeah.
nature or man-made, right? That's basically the two, like what you see. And I'm not talking about work divers, and I'm not talking about commercial divers who go down,
Right, 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 right.
to do things, or like instructors who that's their job to do things, or like,
Mm,
cleaning propellers or cleaning barnacles or doing things like that, right? So people who work underwater, that's different. I'm talking about like people who do this for fun. There's two types of things that you see, either nature or man-made. So man-made, most people think of it as like wrecks and docks and things like that, which is cool. You go to see a World War II wreck. There are no shipwrecks on the surface. Okay, all shipwrecks are in the water. Um, and then nature. Look, you've been to an aquarium, right? Or you've been to a zoo and you saw a lion at the zoo, and then you see a lion in a documentary, and you're like, oh wow, these lions are like caged lions are different than like lions in the David Attenborough kind of show. So you get to go, this is one of the things I like. Not everyone can fly to Africa and see the gazelles, running around, but you can go to any coral reef. They exist almost everywhere in the world. And it's like
mm.
being in nature. It's the same as like people who pay a ton of money to go to the Grand Canyon. It's the same as people who pay a ton of money to climb in Yellowstone or to, hike the Appalachian Trail. It's the same thing.
Okay. Okay, okay, all right. Next question. Um, and I believe I may have asked you this before. I'm trying to remember what it was. Um, no, I have it on the tip of my tongue. I just cannot remember exactly what. I'll make up another one. Don't
Wow, this
worry.
is some great content you're creating here, Mr. Katz.
Thank you very much,
No,
Mr.
no, thank you. I'm
Sharon.
so glad. I'm so glad you came on the podcast and you have all these questions like lined
I
up. You're
could
so organized and
I
everything.
just watch you
Yeah, yeah,
and Mr. Hammer yapping,
yes.
okay? And questions pop up in my mind. Okay? And then I because
But it's a
another
good
one.
question.
Okay?
Like the why scuba dive is a really good
Yeah.
question
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there
yeah.
really is no reason. I mean, it comes down to why not. It's there, it's accessible, you can do it. But the reality is, I mean, if you were the king of the world, you could wave a magic wand and you can say no more scuba diving for anyone ever again. And life would not. I mean, I guess commercial divers again, no more scuba diving for fun. That is like no more tourist scuba diving. I don't know if there's
We
some
moved to
places
Iran.
I guess who would get hit really hard because they are dependent on the tourism dollars that scuba diving brings,
Sure,
but
of course, of
that's
course.
about it. I think your question was about the shark feeding.
Okay, so you're right, right? So a couple. So one was shark feeding. So I remember in your video,
Yeah,
okay, that you had mentioned being on of two schools
that
of thought on this.
there's positives and negatives to like interacting with wildlife. And look, we create artificial reefs all the time. We try to
Yeah,
at least.
yeah.
And I think that shark feeding there's a balance between tourism dollars to how badly it hurts the environment. And there are arguments on both sides. And again, I don't want to, I'm not an expert on any of this crap.
Yeah,
So
but you're not saying, but you're not explicitly saying this is a bad thing.
I, I,
So
it's
so obviously it
controversial.
sounds like so it's not.
The problem is that it's controversial. It's not that it's bad or good. It's just controversial. So I mean, instinctively we would think like that just leave the sharks alone and let them do what they do. Some people
Mhm.
would say, but we fucked up their environment, so we really need to like, help them out. And then some people would say, like, dude, sharks are going to find a place to feed. I think that what I've seen over the last 20 years is that the shark feeding used to be like 100-pound frozen, like 5-gallon buckets that they would come down. And now it's basically become like less than 10 pounds. So it's gotten to
Mhm.
be like, I think that the sharks are attracted to a very small amount of, you can attract a lot of sharks with a very small amount of food that doesn't actually change their ecosystem. It's like basically, it's not even a snack we're not really changing the ecosystem, but the people, which we're a people first kind of culture, the people who do all of the tourism, they are they get to make a living and pump money into shark conservation. So there's another thing, like it used to be that the only way you'd see a shark is if you fished it out of the water.
Yeah,
Now you can't, shark fishing has become like a very bad thing. We don't like it anymore. We don't like it when
because
people
we
do
know
it.
that sharks are more intelligent than we thought. Also, okay.
And they're more
So yeah,
useful and so on.
yeah, yeah.
So what we've seen is that the sharks now have a different status than they used to. And so you can't just go fishing for sharks. And so
Hmm.
the only way to go there is scuba diving, which promotes scuba, promotes, tourism dollars for the operators, which you could say is, which those tourism dollars can, in taxes then promote social programs, but also shark conservation programs. So, and sharks at the aquarium are not the same. Yeah, I've seen bull sharks at the aquarium and I've seen bull sharks in the water, and it doesn't look the same way. The bull sharks in the water look twitchy. They look like they're menacing and they look like they want to eat you. Whereas the sharks in the aquarium look like big catfish that kind of are bored with their lives.
And just waiting for the next meal to be fed
Uh,
to them. So,
yeah. And we learn
um,
a lot. We learn a lot by observing sharks and their behaviors, and the proliferation of GoPro cameras have made it so that operators can't do weird stuff anymore. Like, because someone would get it on camera and they'd get in trouble with the police or some kind of authority, or just they would just get canceled.
as a question for you then, another
Yeah.
question, as an engineer, okay, I'm speaking to the inner engineer in you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to put together a drone, okay, a drone that can go into these shipwrecks and everything? I mean, I understand you want to dive yourself, but like just as just out of an engineering,
I mean, there are people who create, ROVs that go into all
yeah,
of these
yeah, yeah,
places, but
yeah.
it's not the same as being there. I mean, there's a
I
difference
suppose, right?
between sending an ROV down and being in the moment. Look, part of this activity is there's some people going back to like why would you scuba dive? Some people use it as an exclusionary thing, right? I think people who are instructors who have had at least one season of being an instructor lose that kind of exclusivity, but they're like, man, I'm the only one who can go to this place, which is like, cave diver mentality. Some people do that and they get certified as cave divers in order to say that they've been to a place that where basically no one else has been to, which is, I mean, freaking amazing. Mad respect to all these people who do super deep dives and, deep wreck penetrations. Yes, you're right. No one else has been there, and that's that.
So, okay, all right, all right. So in that case, because you were leading me on to my next one.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't remember. I just had it. I just had
Yeah,
it.
we're talking about the
We're
reason
talking.
to go, and it's like, again, it's part of the
Oh, that's
ego
it.
and
Now I.
exclusionary. But I enjoy technical diving for the
You mean
activity
technical?
itself.
When you say technical diving, you mean technical diving as on a contract in order to like
No,
install
technical
install
diving is
something,
different than
no?
commercial diving. So technical diving and recreational diving are two different
Yeah.
kind of sides of the same coin. So open circuit technical diving is, instead of taking one tank and you just go in like what you see in most movies, you have multiple tanks and you do like deeper dives or longer dives that you couldn't do with a single tank scuba. And they also have, decompression obligations and things like that. So I enjoy the logistics behind it. I enjoy, like, that it's a problem that can be solved. It's like an equation, and you're literally like, the laws of physics. You're playing with the laws of physics and you win. I don't know. Win is not the right word. You're playing with
You
the
don't
laws of
die. You
physics.
don't die. You don't die.
You don't lose.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
No
So
whammies.
here's my other question. Now I remember it.
Yes.
Okay, now you as in addition to being a diver, an accomplished diver, you're also an experienced and accomplished skydiver. So I
Yeah,
hear.
but this is
Okay.
not relevant to the here.
I Well, because I wanted to ask you about
Okay.
the previous discussion we had about skydiving and water diving and any kind of differences and similarities.
I think there's a lot of crossover between all of these individual activity sports that are done in a social setting.
Hmm.
Um, you have to kind of be, you have to be your own on a team, on a basketball team. If I played on the same team as Michael Jackson and Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan and whoever, like the best players, LeBron James, um, against you know you and a few of your buddies, we'd probably kick your ass. You see, we the
Sure, sure,
team,
sure.
even though I would never even touch the ball, I'd be there like on the sidelines eating a churro, and I would still be like, on the winning team. So you can be part of a winning team even if you kind of coast, or you can be part of a winning team as even if you are, not contributing directly, which is a different kind of team. In scuba diving and skydiving, you kind of have to do the thing yourself. Like,
Okay.
no one can dive for you. I mean, there's a very limited amount of diving for you that someone can do. At some point, you got to do it yourself, and that's part of that mentality. Like in skydiving as well. Like, someone can take you like you're a passenger, but at some point, there's a certain level of skydiving that you basically have to put the gear on yourself. You have you
Hmm.
have to leave the airplane on your own, and you have to do the thing on your own. You kind of like your own person. So I think that is a crossover. I mean, it's the same thing with base jumping, same thing with
Hmm.
paragliding, same thing with skiing, right? No one can ski for you. At a certain level, there's just no one who can ski for you. Maybe on like a bunny slope, they can hold you, but at a certain level, you just kind of have to do the thing on your own. You have to have your own coordination. That's one thing. The other one is that kind of these are all like laws of physics things and not the laws of
Hmm.
man. There's a lot of things in this world that you can't do or won't do because it's illegal. The rules say so, like human rules say so. There's no
Hmm.
there's no scuba rules. It's,
Yeah, yeah,
if you cannot if you come out of the water and you are bent, you are bent. You bent yourself. It's not because of a law or something like that. No one comes afterwards and be like, "Oh, you should have gotten decompression. Here is your decompression card, and you need to go pay this at the magistrate." So I mean, I like that it's, you can't like sweet talk your way out of it. You know, you can't like have too much of an ego that your body has to actually do the thing that you're supposed to do. And they teach good judgment. And as I said before, bad judgment gives you good experience. Bad experience gives you good judgment.
yeah. Okay,
So,
okay.
some of us have good judgment built in. I know people who, when they were like 10 years old, they were already like had the mindset of, safety culture, and they had good judgment on everything. And there's some people like me who have to learn it hard, right? So
All right.
I like it. I mean, and there's a lot of crossover, by the way. I am sure that a lot of people who scuba dive here have considered or thought of going skydiving, and a lot of people who skydive, if this was a skydiving podcast, I would tell you that probably a lot of the people there on the skydiving podcast would be like, yeah, of course I tried scuba diving, or, I got certified, or I dive on vacation, or something like that.
But I'll say this. I agree with you. I'll say both sports. Okay, you have to check your instruments every so
Yes,
often. Okay,
yes.
both sports you have to carry a knife with you, or scissors, or a knife, or something, so you can cut
Hook knife, yes.
hook knife, like that, right? Hook
Yeah.
knife. Okay, with both sports. Actually,
Skydiving kills you
that's the only
faster.
thing.
Skydiving
Yes, got
kills you
it. Yeah,
faster.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Scuba
yeah.
diving kills you slower. It's slow, it's hard, and you know you're dying the entire time,
Well, unless no, well,
painfully.
unless you're on a rebreather and you just get more and
No,
more
then you
tired and you
just
don't
go to,
notice that.
CO2 and then you just go to
You just
sleep.
go to sleep. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Terrible, terrible stuff. Terrible stuff. Um,
It's horrible. I
I
can't
guess
believe we're talking about this. You're so like
let's
dark,
say
dude.
it's another example. Let's say you know how some submarines, okay, they're like the more shallow ones, I suppose.
Yeah.
They have an open bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, so people can just get right
Like a
in
moon
there.
pool. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah, yeah,
called a moon
yeah, yeah,
pool.
yeah.
Yeah, what
Okay,
about it?
but you still need to go through decompression before you do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So
You can't just go from deep to boom right there.
if you look at the conch shelf that Jacques Cousteau built back in the day off the continental shelf of Saudi Arabia, I think it was.
Yeah,
They had like a people living underwater. I think it was like 25 or something meters, and they had a moon pool. And they had, if you went down there and you intended to go up, you had to
yeah.
decompress. But so you could go and visit, be there for 20 minutes, and you had to leave before and then decompress on the way up.
You mean go
Or you
in
could
the
just live there.
environment or in the water?
Yeah,
Not in
yeah.
the water, in the environment.
Yeah, in the water.
No,
Look
in
at
the
the conch
environment.
shelf thing. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yes, yes. The thing is, everyone has to decompress before they go. I mean, even the astronauts, they're going into like very low pressure environments. So
Yeah.
low pressure. Anytime you're going from high pressure to low pressure, you have to decompress. You can go from low pressure to high pressure at any time. That you can do that quickly, but you have to decompress when you're going up. When the
Huh.
pressure is
Okay.
decreasing.
Versus
Decompression, right?
decreasing.
Decompression. When you
Okay.
when you decrease the pressure. Cool. Thank
You're-
you very much, Mr. Katz. These were awesome questions. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome. Maybe we'll do another one of these when we have a few more episodes and we have some more questions for them. Again, I like that you pick up on things that are just not something we would normally talk about, but I like how you pick up on these things. This was very cool. Did you have fun?
I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll see you in a bit. Bye.
Bye.